Hi, I'm Richard Bistrong, the CEO of Front-Line Anti-Bribery, and I hope this finds everyone in good health and staying safe as I share some thoughts on our current environment here from my home in Connecticut. It's a true pleasure to address the Seton Hall global healthcare compliance community today. Some of us may have already met, as I'm part of the faculty of the Healthcare Compliance Certificate Program and have presented and shared my experiences as part of the program at the New Jersey campus as well as in Paris. So we are certainly in unprecedented times. Yet how can we move ethics and compliance forward in an atmosphere of uncertainty, anxiety, and reduced oversight? So I thought I would share some personal perspectives from my multi-decade experience as a sales executive. So first, in a crisis environment, that line between what might be a permissible interaction and what might be a violation can be particularly blurry. People on the front lines, as I did, might think that cutting corners and circumventing controls isn't harming anyone, and that it actually helps patients get the care, services, and outcomes that are so desperately needed. During my time as a sales executive, I didn't think about the ethical consequences of my conduct and made value judgments I was not entitled to make. The propensity for that kind of narrow decision-making, from my experience, dramatically scales up when we face market headwinds and uncertainty, as we do today. But we don't want anyone thinking that ethical decision-making is delegated to the front lines. So how can we affirmatively address this tension while people are working remotely so that they don't think of themselves in the middle of competing corporate objectives between that intense pressure to get things done, to succeed, and the pressure to do it right? When we are together during leadership and sales meetings, as I've had the honor of joining many of you, it's wonderful to share and exchange perspectives so people embrace that they never have to sacrifice integrity to succeed. But how do we reinforce that in our current environment where commercial and operational teams are dispersed and separated while facing personal and professional stress and anxiety? I think to mitigate those forces, we're in a time where influencing and inspiring might be more essential than implementing. And now is a great time to double down on reaching out to frontline teams, informally or formally, to check in and let the workforce know that you appreciate how we are operating in an environment where values are going to get challenged, especially where people are confronted with re-engineered objectives and incentives. It's an opportune time to stress to the front lines that as compliance leaders, you are there to support everyone's success and safety and to make sure that no one person or the organization as a whole faces a regulatory crisis long after our current economic and health crisis has passed. This is the right time to remind everyone that in today's environment, that what might have seemed like an innocent interaction only months ago could be today's risk decision. So even apart, at least for now, we are all risk managers. And does everyone appreciate that the organization's future success will be due to today's collective, ethical, and sustainable decisions? People in operations, including supply chain personnel, procurement, and commercial teams, are under extreme pressure, impacting their personal and professional lives. This leads to stress, anxiety, and uncertainty, all in the face of market volatility, which I also experienced, albeit not under a pandemic, during my 20 years plus as a sales executive. Spending 250 days a year overseas for the better part of a decade, I also appreciate the stress that remote working and being apart from peers and colleagues can have on decision making. It can be a perfect storm, but only if we don't proactively address it. Research has demonstrated that career-changing moments, like when someone has a change in role or organizational structure, maybe a new supervisor or a change to a compensation plan, that all of those can have a dramatic impact, or any of those can have a dramatic impact on workforce misconduct and result in reduced employee engagement. In today's environment, we have many of those forces present and in extreme form. Yet we don't want anyone to feel disconnected and to think that a pause in normal business activity translates into a compliance pause. What we don't want is me thinking, which is a natural comfort zone and default when we are unsure and anxious about the future. But mitigating these personal and professional forces, which can tip people to the wrong side of decision making, is not as difficult as one might think. From my experience, solutions are only a call, Zoom, or WebEx away. It goes back to reaching out and affirmatively addressing the tension and anxiety that we know exists, even informally, to pick up the phone or set up a video social hour just to check in, to ask how things are going. We are all getting to know one another a lot more as we work from home, so why not just ask how everyone is adjusting to the new norm? Even to share your own challenges and how you are confronting this crisis. I know that means showing a little vulnerability and connecting with others on a very personal level in a way that might be new to us all. But what research demonstrates is the more we reach out to one another when we don't have an agenda, like the check-ins I've just described, the more likelihood that someone will reach out to you for help and support when they are facing an ethical dilemma, and a crisis might just be at hand. These informal check-ins can also increase your comfort that what you want to happen on the front lines of operations is actually happening. As I shared, this is the time to show our humanity and vulnerability, which are essential skill sets right now, and to ask people how they are doing without that agenda at hand. It's a time to acknowledge and affirm what employees might be feeling, to show compassion, while at the same time reminding them that the only problem you can't help them with is the one they might be keeping to themselves. If there was a key phrase to all of this, I think it would be empathetic listening. I don't know, maybe that's the start of a new hashtag. But in all seriousness, this is a critical time to reach out to your business peers and to remind them that when it comes to the importance of ethical business practices, that those messages sound so much louder when they're coming out of the voice of business and not just the voice of compliance. And that's not a one and done activity. We need to stress the frequency of messaging that is so vital right now. We need to keep reinforcing the importance of strong ethical decision making, particularly in the wake of a crisis, through that voice of business. When responsible business practices are messaged through the corporate narrative, in addition to the compliance one, well, that's when ethics and compliance becomes more than a support function. It becomes a part of how things are done around here. Yet we know that leadership is distracted right now, and rightfully so, which makes the importance of clear communications even more essential right now. And that goes beyond the law. We don't want anyone making lawful but awful decisions in a crisis. And we've already seen too many of those. So it goes back to everyone having a responsibility to affirmatively address the uncertainty in the workforce. As a team, everyone should be thinking about how to double down on messaging around how challenges can always be unpacked as a team, and that no one is alone when it comes to ethical decision making. And during those conversations with business leaders, it's an appropriate time to remind them of how ambiguity during a crisis sends a loud yet unspoken message to the workforce to do whatever it takes to resume business and recapture market share. That's dangerous for everyone. Passive leadership during times of economic instability is confusing to those who need clarity. And when leaders are not specific or vague about ethical expectations, it can set in motion a hazardous chain of disinformation. Remember, in times like these, the grapevine works a lot faster than the hotline. Remote working, as I did for over 10 years in my role as an international sales VP, does not need to lead to disengagement as it did for me, with catastrophic consequences in what was a crucible that could have been avoided by keeping strong bonds with those who were committed to my success and safety. Looking back on that journey through the U.S. criminal justice system, I think this is the perfect time to remind business leaders that when they are addressing ethics and integrity, they're not just delivering the message, they are the message. And from my experience, that is so powerful, especially given today's challenges. Social distancing does not need to be integrity distancing, and remote working does not need to lead to employee disengagement. So it goes back to those formal and informal check-ins with those dispersed teams, and to show your empathy and humanity in the context of how we live and work right now. We just have to keep reminding everyone in the workforce that no one is alone to navigate these uncharted waters. I can't state enough the importance of these personal connections. So yes, this is an unprecedented crisis, but it's also an unprecedented opportunity to strengthen bonds with your workforce and enhance the long-term reputation of your organization for years to come, one ethical decision at a time. And speaking personally for a moment, I can appreciate firsthand what it's like to live for an extended period of time where events are out of your control, even though in my case it was a self-inflicted journey and a 10-year journey through the U.S. criminal justice system. But I could also appreciate the challenges of containing a virus, as I contracted an infectious disease in prison that went untreated. So I do whatever I can not to add strain to the already stressed resources of our global healthcare systems in treating this pandemic. As that untreated condition resulted in my having a permanent underlying health condition, good health and well-being is not something I take for granted. And even more reason to appreciate the work that the Seton Hall healthcare compliance community does to make sure that everyone gets the right care at the right place and at the right time. So a very heartfelt thanks for this opportunity to chat with you today, and wishing everyone good health, well-being, and continued safety. I hope to see you and your teams again soon when the certificate program resumes, both here in the U.S. and overseas. Thank you again.